Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Today we are talking about a crisis in New Jersey's courtrooms. According to the New Jersey State Bar Association, the number of judicial vacancies are at record levels. Now, how it's delaying justice and harming litigants as well as families in the state, that's what we're going to be discussing with Jeralyn Lawrence. She's president of the State Bar Association. First, though, how the hospitality industry is bouncing back from the pandemic. The pandemic has been hard on many business sectors, and one of the hardest hit is the restaurant and hospitality industry. Even now, 3 years since COVID-19 was ravaging our area, businesses are still struggling to come back. Dana Lancellotti is the president and CEO of the New Jersey Restaurant and Hospitality Association. She joins us now to talk about post-pandemic life and how it is impacting the industry. Dana, so good to see you.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So can you talk a little bit about how New Jersey restaurants are bouncing back, or maybe they are not bouncing back?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, they are bouncing back. And what's wonderful is that the public wants the restaurants to be back, right? So everyone is excited to be gathering. They're excited to have weddings again and have family occasions and be able to go to the hotels and, enjoy traveling around the state. So that's all wonderful, but it's been a really, really tough ride, and it's not over as far as the aftermath of the pandemic. The supply costs, the food costs, the labor issues still exist.
Right. Well, New Jersey's been, I guess you could say, reopened for about a year. And as you just alluded to, we're dealing with inflation, cost of everything, supply chain. So how is this impacting the hospitality industry?
Well, they've had to continue to shift. They're still adapting all the time. It's like a constant navigating the road ahead, right? So they've had to change their menus. They've had to remove certain foods from their menus because they're just way too exorbitant in the cost. They don't want to have to pass that along to the customers. So you may find that at some of your favorite restaurants where there was a certain dish that you really loved and now you're not seeing it there. Or they're putting it on the special list so that the server makes sure that they tell you this is going to be this much of a cost because our costs went up. So and then they're also dealing with the labor issues, and they're finding ways to operate without people in some cases. So you may have noticed there's kiosks in food establishments now. There's even robotics in kitchens. There are a lot of wonderful entrepreneurial people out there who are finding ways to fill voids, and they have stepped up with all kinds of new devices and new automated technology to be able to replace the lack of labor availability. So
right, and that is definitely a huge issue for so many across the board. Now, there is a thought that a lot of people, especially with the cost of gas and fuel going up, that are going to be staying a little bit closer to home for summer vacation. So what do you think? Is that going to help the Jersey Shore motel hotel industry and other vacation spots?
Yeah, it's actually, we should be very thankful that we live where we do, because you do not have to travel far to have a wonderful getaway. And we have everything here in Jersey, and then in the surrounding states, there's just so much that we can drive off and do. Yes, the gas prices are high. So, hey, you can take a short day trip or a weekend away and not drive very far. So it's a very lucky thing. We do see the beaches have been booming. Last year was like a record-breaking year at the beaches. So they are doing fantastic as far as demand, but then there's the labor issue, which hinders a lot of the quality of the experience for people. And then the restaurateurs and the hotels, they worry that the public will think this is because they don't know how to give good service, but it's not their fault. They're literally trying to manage with a smaller amount of people working. And that's something that has not been remedied.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know my daughter recently graduated and we went out and, it took a long time, but we all kind of knew going into it. We were just grateful that we were able to, to be able there to be able to celebrate. Our restaurants, what are you hearing back from the industry? How is the public being understanding? Because, if you have people who, your customers and your consumers are going in understanding, that's great. But sometimes, you get an angry customer yelling at the wrong poor, teenager just, trying to keep a summer job, and then, but they don't need that and they're going to leave. So have you heard any feedback in that area?
Yeah, it was really tough last year, and when we were still requiring the masks indoors, and then it was sort of putting it on the servers and the hostess and the managers to police people, and that's not their job, right? So that was really, there was a lot of volatile situations there. People are understanding. There are still people who forget. I mean, you go in, it's the worst time too, because people are often very hungry when they're waiting. So you're talking about waiting for a service that involves you having to be hungry while you're waiting. So people get, sometimes they're not at their best at those times. So we continue to ask people to please just remember. And when you go out, your expectations should be that you're going to spend a little more time with your family or whoever you're out with at the table, and talking and maybe waiting a bit, and just look at it that way and know that that's how it's going to be. And please understand that everyone's still trying to get back on track.
Right. Because there are so many of those small mom and pop shops, we don't want them closing the doors. Now, you mentioned how businesses are having to kind of reinvent and come up with creative ideas as far as, maybe there's a robotic or a little kiosk for takeout. So has there been a cost increase in the way restaurants are having to do business because people may still be hesitant to come in, or they don't have the staff to come in? Is that increasing, decreasing the cost of the restaurants being able to do business?
Yeah, their costs have escalated tremendously. I mean, they're still implementing all of the extra cleaning and sanitation and everything that came through the COVID situation. Nobody's going to stop doing that. We're going to continue added guidelines and things for that. When you think about it, if they can't seat all their tables, they're not maximizing their sales opportunities, right? So when they have empty tables and they're not seating people at them, it's because they don't have enough staff to cover all the tables, and they don't want you to be waiting an hour for someone to come to your table. So, they're not able to fill to full capacity in a lot of cases. And then there's the outdoor dining. That's a big positive. That's a great thing. The parklets and the streeteries, and, dining downtown in the street is a beautiful thing, and people have enjoyed that a lot. So the restaurants that are able to take advantage of that, that's great. But you have to remember, when they're doing tents and things, those tents are very expensive. Right. And then if they go into the fall, they've got to have the heaters. So there's all these added things that they maybe didn't have before at their property, and now they've adapted to be able to add more opportunity to fill tables, or to have people sitting outside and be more comfortable that way. Just, my goodness.
Yeah, right. I remember myself when I was younger working in retail, you could compare from this time last year. It's very difficult to get a baseline to compare and to be able to know what to anticipate, because these past few years, have thrown everything, all of those, the data, the norms off. So it's got to be very, very difficult to plan and to figure out how much food do we need, how much staff do we need. And like you mentioned, even having those heaters on, and the cost of fuel to run those heaters can sometimes cost more if people aren't coming out.
Yeah, it's nuts. But you know what? Yeah. It's Jersey, the restaurateurs and the hospitality people are incredibly strong and resilient, right? We've been through hurricanes. We've risen, above all kinds of challenges. So what I do love is seeing how they just make it work. They are fighters, they are survivors, and the restaurants that are still standing are standing because their owners, their operators were willing to cook, greet guests, bus tables. They do anything they have to do. Same in the hotels. They work the front desk. They do whatever they have to do to stay in business. So that's inspiring, definitely.
Well, final thought here. If somebody's watching this, may not be familiar with what you do, how can your association help businesses and those business owners struggling amid inflation and, of course, the worker shortages?
So we do so many different things. We advocate. We're talking with legislators and the governor's office. Federal and state, advocacy that we do on a daily basis, keeping up with the bills and the things that we go and testify. Our office is right across the street from the State House in Trenton. We walk across the street and we testify for bills that we need to support and protect our industry. We also have an education foundation where we train the workforce of the future. We have a culinary curriculum and restaurant management curriculum that goes into high schools that participate with our Pro Start program. It's very inspiring. And we have all kinds of member benefits that we offer through the partnerships that we have with the supply chain and vendors. So there's so many things that we're doing on a daily basis. We have events, we bring people together. We're doing a town hall in July on liquor license, the liquor license system in New Jersey, which is a very hot topic for our industry. And we're doing an advocacy day in Trenton at our office building and going across the street and advocating with our members on June 16th, next week. So we're constantly moving and shaking and trying to do whatever we can, listening to the needs of our members and being a resource and support system for them as much as we are able.
Well, Dana, we thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. And I live in Lambertville, and we love all of our small restaurants. They're all mom and pop small restaurants. So right, yeah. So and so many of them have been able to adapt. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us and also share some advice too if you're going out and about and dining and enjoying all that New Jersey has to offer. Thank you.
Yes, enjoy the summer.
You too.
Absolutely. Thank you.
New Jersey State Bar Association President Jeralyn Lawrence joins us now. And Jeralyn, it's so good to see you.
You as well, Laura. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, well, New Jersey is facing a number of judicial vacancies of historic proportions. People are blaming Governor Murphy and the Democratic majority legislature for not appointing judges. So, well, let's just start for people who may not be following the court system as closely. In New Jersey, judges are not elected, they are appointed. So can you talk a little bit about the situation, the numbers, what we're dealing with when we are talking about a lack of judges in New Jersey?
We have reached catastrophic levels. We have reached levels that are absolutely impacting access to justice. Right now, we are at 75 judicial vacancies in the trial court. We are about to be down a month from now. If there's no appointments forthcoming, we will be down 3 Supreme Court justices. So we are in a place of really, it's beyond a crisis. We have reached catastrophic, and children and families are suffering as a result of this lack of access to the court.
Yeah. Right. And when you talk about delays in court cases, a lot of people think more about criminal cases, but we're also talking about divorces, child custody, child support, real quality of life. So can you talk a little bit about just how far-reaching this is?
Absolutely. I mean, the chief spoke in Atlantic City at our annual meeting, and he mentioned the number of defendants. I think it was close to 6,000 defendants languishing in jail and on the criminal side. But on the family side, I did an informal survey with some of my family law colleagues. That's what I practice. I'm a divorce and family lawyer. So, and what I learned was of the 16 counties that responded, either 9 of those counties, they were not having divorce trials. So in 9 counties in the state, you could not even get divorced if you wanted to, if you needed a trial. And you could not even have any post-judgment divorce issues litigated. In 13 total counties, maybe you can get a trial date, but that would be months and months apart. and months away. So what's happening? Our kids are living in a household whose parents are warring. They are fighting every day, oftentimes in front of the kids. My colleagues are telling me, and personally I'm seeing in my office is seeing, children struggling. When parents cannot end their divorce, children are languishing. My colleagues are reporting to me that they have clients whose children are suicidal. Children are now cutting themselves, and they are not able to bring closure to these cases because you cannot be heard in a family court. I've heard Cape May County doesn't even have a divorce judge. So you can't, there's not even a matrimonial judge sitting in Cape May County.
I have so many questions. The constitutionality of this, how is this even allowed to happen? You would think, like you said, you have people who are not being afforded, accused who are not being offered due process. You have, as you mentioned, children who are sadly taking their lives. It's bad enough we were in a pandemic, they were isolated, and if they have a dysfunctional home, how in the world is this able to happen, to have this many vacancies?
The State Bar Association, we're struggling with that same question. I mean, we have tried for months and months the diplomatic way, through many meetings and conversations with members of the legislature and governor's office, but we're not seeing any break in the logjam. There should be no vacancies, absolutely none. And we have now reached a level that it's just intolerable. So we are pursuing and considering all options available to us. There's, no decisions have been affirmatively made, but if a lawsuit needs to be filed, the State Bar Association will consider bringing a lawsuit if need be. But we're trying not to do that. We've had plenty of conversations, but there is no meaningful change. This is not resonating with anybody to spur them into action to fill these vacancies. I mean, the chief gave an extremely compelling speech just a couple weeks ago at our annual convention about what's happening, and it just falls on deaf ears. So there is a logjam between the governor's office. I mean, the governor has not even made, other than Rachel Weiner Apter, who Senator Schapese has not signed off on, and what has said is she has good reason to do so according to her. But the governor hasn't even appointed anyone else for us to consider, the legislature to consider. So everybody is just being enmeshed in their own candidate and not moving beyond that candidate and offering any other solution. So we're in a battle of wills here, we're in a battle of egos, and we're not fulfilling the constitutional mandate of what's required to sit on this court.
I mean, what do you think it's going to take to get the problem fixed? Heaven forbid people are in domestic disputes and they need help. You can't, like you said, you can't just do certain things. You need a judge to be able to sign off on this. So how do you think the problem in the immediate, band-aiding it, how can it be fixed short term and then also looking long term?
The only way to fix this is the legislature and the governor need to collaborate together and act with the sense of urgency that the circumstances dictate. We do not have time. Time is not on our side anymore. So whatever the reason that they have to be behind or opposed to their candidate, they have to figure it out. We don't have time anymore. So that until Governor Murphy nominates candidates and the legislature can review and confirm them, we're still at a standstill. The court is doing their very best in trying to marshal resources. They are pulling judges away from civil cases so that they can hear domestic violence matters and can hear criminal matters or landlord-tenant. as well as getting a priority because they were at a standstill for years during the pandemic. So the court is trying to do the best that they can, but with such a vacancy rate, it's hard for them to have the resources to hear these matters. So victims of domestic violence, they do have the ability to get into the court, at least initially. When their final hearing will be heard, that can take months and months. But trying to get a family divorced or having a court address child-related issues, who knows? That could be years from now. There's also significant financial consequences that are happening. If you look at a family and they're trying to divorce and buy a spouse out of the home so that their children have stability, a couple months ago, interest rates were 2%, 3%. Now they're 5%, 6%. So you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars because if you're not divorced, you can't refinance. And so you're costing these families hundreds of thousands of dollars. The court is so short-staffed, they're not processing court orders that would otherwise divide retirement accounts. And so couples do not have access to their retirement money. They're losing that access to monetize their accounts. They can't make investments. They can't purchase a home. They can't provide another opportunity for their children to live someplace else, even if they wanted to separate. So the trickle-down effect of not having access to the court, not being able to try your case is really devastating families and children.
And I think,
wish I had,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh.
I wish I had a better answer other than I think the more attention the media pays to this, and thank you for doing this interview, the more people are shocked and horrified by this. Hopefully they reach out to their local members of the legislature and the governor and said that they need to fill this because their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles, those are going to be the people that are impacted by not having access to the court.
Well, and I think in light of just turning on the news and you see so much tragedy, you see people, shooting, school students, people in the grocery store. And so often it goes back to mental health issues. And this, without being over dramatic, you've got children caught up, oftentimes being played as pawns in what can be some very horrible divorces. And not to sound too dramatic, but I mean, really for these children and the families, this could be life and death, and certainly impact on their health. I mean, because when you're stressed, it leads to so many others, just that domino effect. Again, without being too dramatic, it sounds like it truly is life and death we're talking.
It truly is. And you are not being dramatic. You have children, they don't know where they're going to school come September. They don't know where they're living. They don't know when they're going to have parenting time with their mother or their father or their other parent. There are some families that for a job, they need to relocate out of state so that they can put food on their table. They're not able to do that. So you have children that have no idea as to what the next stage of their life looks like. Where are they going to live? And as you point out, they're coming out of a period of isolation, trying to transition out of the pandemic. And we are seeing very real consequences to that. Suicides, cutting, significant mental health impacts to children not being able to have a path forward because their parents are stuck in such a horrific process and have no path forward.
Well, Jeralyn, we thank you so much for talking a little bit about this, kind of enlightening people on what's happening, because there are so many headlines when it comes to inflation and gas prices. Not everybody is necessarily aware of this. So I would love for you to be able to come back on and give us an update as hopefully we get some more solutions and get judges appointed so the backlog doesn't have even more devastating consequences on our families and our children. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Laura, thanks so much for having me on and expressing an interest in this very important issue. Very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
You as well.
Next week, I speak with Assemblywoman Kim Earlner, a Republican representing the 11th District, which covers parts of Monmouth County. Recently, she moved to force a vote on her bill to standardize school emergency response training for police 2 days following the apparent missteps of law enforcement during the school shooting in Texas.
Assemblywoman, I'm going to rule on. Then I'm going to declare your motion to be out of order.
I would like to read.
I've already declared your motion to be out of order. Assemblywoman Ullman, please take your seat. Cut off her microphone.
And then my microphone was shut off. I know emergencies are requested, throughout the assembly, and I was shut down without being able to speak.
Plus, Assemblyman Robert Karabinchak, who represents the 18th Legislative District, which covers parts of Monmouth County. He recently held a hearing on wave energy and explains how wave energy, or energy from the ocean, can benefit New Jersey.
The waves never stop. The sun goes down at night. The winds slow down and pick up. Wave energy is always constant and is always there. So it's an energy source that I believe will adhere and be a supplement to both wind and solar.
And that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Laura Jones, and this is New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. We'll see you back here next time.